Imagine the world around you is just constantly sending out these invisible waves of energy.
Right. And we're not just talking about electrical signals or light.
This is sound.
Uh,
And when we talk about sound, we're not just talking about the noise you hear. We're talking about pure energy traveling.
that's the first thing you have to get. Sound isn't just something you hear, it's a form of kinetic energy. It all starts with a vibration.
Like when a guitar string is plucked.
Exactly. That string moves and it pushes the air particles right next to it.
And that one little push starts a whole journey, a kind of domino effect or a ripple through the air that carries the energy.
We picture it as a wave, but what sound waves are really made of are tiny pockets of pressure. Think about squishing and stretching a slinky.
Okay, I can picture that.
When the slinky is all squished together, that's a compression. It's where the air particles are forced tightly together.
And then right after that squished part, they spread back out.
That spread out area is called a rarefaction. So sound energy travels by constantly pushing and pulling the medium, moving those compressions and rarefactions all the way to your ear.
Which brings us to a huge rule about sound. It needs that medium, right?
It absolutely requires a medium. It can't just float through emptiness. Sound needs particles, gas, liquid, or solid to bump into and pass the energy along.
So that's why in movies, when a spaceship explodes in space, it shouldn't actually make any noise.
Exactly. In the vacuum of space, there's no air, no particles to compress. So if two asteroids collide, it's completely silent. There's nothing to carry the vibration.
Okay, let's talk about travel time then. If sound needs a medium, its speed must completely depend on what it's traveling through.
That's the key variable. Think of the particles in a medium like relay runners passing a baton. If the runners are far apart, it's a slow handoff.
But if they're close together, it's super fast.
Instantaneous, almost. So that brings us to air. It's a gas, so the particles are pretty spread out.
Meaning sound travels slowly.
Relatively slowly, yeah. In dry air at about 68 degrees Fahrenheit, sound moves at around 767 miles per hour.
Which is, I mean, that's like a fighter jet.
It is. But it's nothing compared to the speed of light.
And that's why you always see lightning first, and then you hear the thunder a few seconds later. The sound wave is lagging way behind.
Now let's switch to a liquid, like water. The particles in water are much, much closer together.
So the energy transfer is more efficient, faster.
Way faster. Sound moves through water at about 4,900 feet per second. That's maybe 4 times faster than in air.
So I'm guessing solids are the ultimate speed champions. Their particles are locked super tight.
Absolutely. The particles in a solid are practically touching, so the energy transfer is almost immediate. In something dense like steel, sound waves can travel over 19,000 feet per second.
Wow. So the tighter the matter, the faster the sound.
That's the rule.
But what about temperature? I've heard that warm air carries sound faster than cold air. Why is that?
It all comes back to kinetic energy. In warmer air, the particles are already moving around more quickly. They're more agitated.
They're already excited.
Right. So when a sound wave hits them, they pass that vibration along just a little bit faster than slow-moving cold particles would.
Okay, so we've got how sound travels and how fast.
Yeah.
But what makes a deep bass drum different from a high-pitched whistle? Let's talk about sound quality, maybe starting with pitch.
Pitch is just how high or low a sound seems to your brain, and that's determined by one thing: the frequency of the sound wave.
Frequency is just a count, right? How many vibrations or waves pass a certain point every second we measure it in? Hertz.
Hertz, yeah. So if you have a high-pitched sound like a flute, what does that wave look like?
It must have a lot of waves packed together.
A very high-frequency wave, many, many rapid vibrations. And the opposite is true for a low-pitched sound, like a bass drum. That's a low frequency, so fewer waves pass by in the same amount of time.
What's the range our ears can actually pick up? I feel like we hear everything, but that's not actually true, is it?
Not at all. Humans have a pretty good range. We can generally hear from a very low 20 hertz all the way up to about 20,000 hertz.
And I've heard that as people get older, the higher frequencies are the first to go.
That's right. The delicate systems in our ears wear down, and those super high frequencies are often what we lose first.
So there's this whole world of sound that animals use that we're just completely missing.
Huge chunks of it. Dogs can hear frequencies much higher than 20,000 hertz. Bats use frequencies we can't even begin to detect. We'll get to that, but first, let's go from pitch to loudness.
Right, volume. So if pitch is about the number of waves, frequency volume must be about the power of the wave.
It is. That power is determined by the wave's amplitude.
Amplitude is just the height of the wave, right?
Exactly. A wave with a high amplitude is physically taller, it carries way more energy, and that results in a louder sound. A quiet sound has short, gentle, low-amplitude waves.
And we measure that loudness on the decibel scale. Why do we need a special scale just for volume?
Because the decibel scale, or dB, is logarithmic. And this is really important for you to understand, especially when it comes to safety. It doesn't go up by simple addition.
So not like 20 dB is just twice as loud as 10 dB.
Not even close. A 10 dB increase means the sound's intensity is 10 times more powerful.
10 times.
10 times. So if you compare, say, a 10 dB whisper to a 30 dB sound, that's 100 times more powerful and increases exponentially.
That really changes how you think about hearing damage. It doesn't take much of an increase in volume to seriously ramp up the energy hitting your ear.
And that's why we stress safety. A normal conversation is about 60 decibels. But if you're exposed to something over 120 dB, like a siren right next to you, that can cause immediate pain and permanent damage.
And for longer exposure, like a concert.
Anything over 85 decibels for a long period, you really need to be wearing hearing protection. That's a key takeaway for you.
Okay, so now we know about the waves. How does our body turn those invisible vibrations into something we understand as speech or music? Let's trace the journey through the ear.
The ear is basically the world's most impressive biological converter. It takes physical motion and turns it into electrical data for the brain.
It starts with the outer ear, the part you see. It's shaped like a funnel, right?
A perfect funnel. It collects all those sound waves and directs them down the ear canal, concentrating the energy before it even gets to the mechanical parts.
Which is the middle ear, that's where the eardrum is.
Right. The wave hits the eardrum, which is a thin membrane, and makes it vibrate. Those vibrations then get passed to the 3 smallest bones in your entire body: the hammer, anvil, and stirrup.
And what's their job? Are they just passing the signal along?
They're critical amplifiers. They take the vibration from the big eardrum and focus it onto the much smaller opening of the inner ear. They act like tiny levers, magnifying the force of the sound by about 20 times.
Why does it need to be amplified so much?
Because the signal is about to hit a liquid, and it takes more force to make waves in liquid than in air.
And that liquid is inside the inner ear in that snail-shaped thing called the cochlea.
Exactly. When the stirrup pushes against the cochlea's entrance, it creates actual waves inside the fluid of that spiral chamber. And this is where the real magic happens.
What's in there?
Lining the cochlea are thousands upon thousands of incredibly delicate, tiny hair cells.
So the waves in the fluid make the little hairs move.
They do. They bend and shear with the rhythm of the fluid. And that mechanical movement is what those hair cells convert into an electrical signal. That signal then shoots up the auditory nerve straight to the brain, which finally tells you what you're hearing.
And it's a really fragile system.
Incredibly fragile. And this is so important. Those tiny hair cells in the cochlea, if they get damaged by loud noise, they do not grow back. The damage is permanent.
Okay, let's talk about what happens when sound waves hit things. We know sound can bounce back, which we call an echo.
An echo is when sound hits a hard surface and returns to you. But what's really cool is the timing. For your brain to hear a clean, separate echo, the surface has to be at least 56 feet away.
So if it's closer than that, say in a small, empty gym,
Then the reflected sound waves get back to you too quickly. They don't have time to separate from the original sound, so they just kind of blend together and create this lingering, booming effect.
that's called reverberation, right?
That's reverberation. It's why it can be hard to understand someone in a big, empty hall.
And the material makes a huge difference. Hard things like concrete or glass are great reflectors.
They are. They're dense and rigid. But soft, porous materials like carpets, curtains, or foam are excellent sound absorbers.
So the energy doesn't bounce back.
Instead, it gets trapped inside the material and converted into a tiny amount of heat.
Reflection is also critical for technology, like sonar.
Sonar is basically using reflected sound to see underwater. A ship sends out a sound pulse, it bounces off the ocean floor or a submarine, and by timing how long the echo takes to return, you can map everything out.
And some animals are masters of this.
Dolphins, bats.
Mhm.
They use a biological sonar called echolocation to navigate and hunt. They send out clicks and read the returning echoes like a detailed 3D map.
This all ties into another phenomenon, resonance. You hear about singers shattering a wine glass with their voice. Is that real?
It's absolutely real, and that's resonance in action. Every object has what we call a natural frequency, a frequency it just likes to vibrate at.
So if a sound wave comes along, that matches that exact frequency.
The object starts vibrating wildly. It absorbs more and more energy from the sound waves. With a wine glass, if you sing its natural frequency loud enough, the vibrations can become so intense they actually break the glass.
So resonance is key for music. It's how a guitar body amplifies the strings. But for buildings, it could be a disaster.
A total disaster. Engineers have to be very careful to design bridges in buildings so that their natural frequencies won't be matched by something like strong winds. You don't want your skyscraper starting to resonate.
So how do we control sound? In a recording studio, for example.
They use materials that absorb energy. Studios are covered in thick acoustic foam, which traps sound waves and converts them to heat. At home, you can use carpets or heavy drapes to cut down on reverberation.
And double-paned windows. Is that for sound too?
It's an excellent tactic. The layer of air or gas trapped between the two panes of glass makes it much harder for sound vibrations to pass through.
Okay, let's go to the extremes of sound. We know big instruments like a tuba make low notes, and small instruments like a flute make high notes.
Right, size generally determines pitch. But if a trumpet and a piano play the exact same note, we can still tell them apart instantly.
What is that unique fingerprint of sound called?
That's timbre. Timbre is the unique quality or color of a sound. It's what lets your brain differentiate all the instruments in an orchestra, even when they're playing the same note at the same volume.
And finally, let's talk about the sounds we can't hear, outside our 20 to 20,000 hertz range.
We're missing two huge worlds. First, there's ultrasound. Those are all the frequencies higher than 20,000 hertz.
That's what bats use for echolocation.
And it's what doctors use in medicine to create images of the body. Those high-frequency waves bounce off internal organs cleanly, giving us a picture without any surgery.
And at the other end of the spectrum, the really deep sounds.
That's infrasound. Frequencies below 20 hertz. We can't hear it, but these are massive waves that can travel for vast distances, even through the ground.
And some animals use it to communicate.
Elephants and whales use infrasound to talk to each other across miles of territory. And huge natural events like volcanoes or earthquakes also produce powerful infrasound waves that scientists can monitor.
So really, sound is just this invisible energy traveling in vibrations. It's fastest in solids, and it has to have a medium to move at all.
And understanding those basic properties, that pitch is frequency and volume is amplitude, helps you understand everything from protecting your hearing to how engineers design safer buildings.
So the next time you hear a sound, or even when you're sitting in silence, remember you're only hearing a tiny slice of the world's hidden soundtrack. You have to wonder what incredible sounds might be passing by you, completely unheard.
Good luck with your studies.